There have been many stories I've been reluctant to reveal the fullness of detail of what happened, especially in Vietnam. I've written about a lot of stuff. And this particular story that I want to convey, I wrote about. And when I wrote about it, I underplayed it. I talked about that I sensed the spirits of dead soldiers on my aircraft, but in truth, it was more than sense. But I'll get into that as I tell the story of what actually happened. This was 1967. I believe it was around the springtime. It was Operation Billings, which 1st Infantry Division was involved with, and we were supporting them. My 120th Assault Helicopter Company was involved with inserting the troops into LZs and picking up troops and wounded and resupplying. Well, this particular day, we heard frantic call coming from an LZ that was under extreme attack by the NVA and VC, and they were in dire straits, and they had wounded that they were asking to get out. And there was nobody else around. We were the only aircraft. We were the only helicopter within a reasonable distance that could respond. So we went, knowing that we were going to go into a LZ where they were fighting. And what we gathered from the radio call that the perimeter was broke, and around the edges of this thing there was some hand-to-hand combat, actually close combat going on. So they couldn't bring in artillery or bombing because it was very, very close. So we had to fly through this. So we heard the frantic call. We decided we got to go in. It's wounded in there. We got to do it. So knowing very well that we had a very hot LZ waiting for us, we flew in, but I had my machine gun and I basically couldn't fire because we didn't know where the good guys were at or the bad guys, and we had no clue where anything was going on down there. We did have them pop smoke, and we saw yellow smoke, which we identified, and so we knew where the LZ was at, that we were going to pick up the wounded men. So as we pulled over, there was explosions below our helicopter, and the helicopter was shaking, and there was rounds, ding, ding. I could hear them, feel them actually, hitting the aluminum body or whatever the helicopter's made out of, just and we were just shaking all over the sky. We were flying just barely over treetop level, trying to hug it as close as we could. And we came down there and we saw the smoke, and we knew we had to go over all kinds of guys shooting and firing and running, and it was a heart-beating, heart-pounding view. We pulled down and we landed very quickly, bounced, boom, hard landing. And pilots told me, help them get the guys on as fast as you can. We got to get out of here, because we were concerned. We were the biggest thing in the target, the biggest target sitting in the LZ. Everybody was going to come after us. So the more seconds, literally, the more seconds we were on the ground, the more likely we were going to get hit by a mortar as they could zero in on us. They've already picking us off with small arms fire and automatic weapon fire. So I disconnected my mic cord to my helmet, jumped off my helicopter, and ran about 15, 20 yards because I saw a medic trying to lift this guy, and I grabbed him under my shoulder, and I started running with them, and he had a guy with him, and another couple of guys were behind them, and we were all running to the helicopter, and there was rounds going off. You could see little pops of dirt. It's really strange. People shooting at you, but rounds are going on the ground and whizzing by. And once in a while, it felt like something hit the guy I was carrying, like they were absorbing rounds as he was on my back. So we quickly got to the helicopter. I throw the bodies, not gently at all. We just throw these guys in the back of the helicopter. We had 2 or 3 on the floor and a couple in the seat. And I jumped back up on the seat and gave a signal to the pilot to go, and plugged in my helmet, and we started to take off. And there was a medic standing there looking at me, and his face was all dirty, and he had blood from other people on him, and torn uniform, and behind him is smoke. In fact, the LZ, from the explosions and everything, had actually caught fire, and it was actually a forest fire engaged all around this LZ. Grass was on fire, trees were on fire, and the fighting in between this forest fire. And he's looking at me, and he just kind of does this little wave, and I'm going, holy cow. And I look at his face, and I could see tear streaks running down his muddy cheeks. My heart hurt for him. And I gave him a blessing wave, and we took off, and we didn't know if we were going to make it out of the LC because we had extra weight of these medical evacuees, and we still had a fair amount of fuel, plus our crew, and it was a hot day, which meant getting any kind of transitional lift would be difficult, contrary to what everybody thinks. Helicopter just doesn't go up and down and, just can lift up. Yes and no on that. Sometimes if you got enough weight, you need a runway. You need a little running space to get up speed to get transitional lift and lift off. And the only way we were going to get that was going the long place direction on this LZ. And we were going to fly directly over all the fighting and all the bad guys. And we were getting rounds, and the rounds were just coming all over the place. Bang, bang, bang. It was heavy. We could see tracers and coming through the helicopter itself. We took the doors off. I had the doors off my helicopter, so it was just big open spaces. And there was rounds going through and hitting the guys laying there and on the seats. It was frightening. Explosions continue. So we kept trying to lift, and we just barely made the trees. In fact, our skids hit several branches, and we tore some trees off, and the helicopter shook, and we finally got airborne a little distance and headed for a MASH unit. And then I went to check on the wounded, and they were totally riddled. They were riddled with so many rounds that came into the helicopter while we were loading them and evacuating them. That when I went around and checked them all, there wasn't one that was still alive. And there was body parts everywhere, and there was blood pouring out. It was pools and pools of blood. It was like Niagara Falls. Blood was just pouring out of the helicopter. And not having the doors on the helicopter and going probably about 100 knots by then, there was this wind inside the helicopter. And it was blowing all this blood all around inside the helicopter. So it was all over the padding of the walls. It was on the back of the helicopter pilots' helmets. Some splashed up on the windshield. And I was soaked. Stuff was just blowing all over me. I had blood everywhere. My uniform was all bloody. So was my gunners. And then I told the pilots, I said, don't go to the MASH unit, just go to the nearest place where you can drop off the bodies, closest camp, and we'll clean up the windshield, clean up some of the blood, and go back. And as I sat back, and I'm looking at the bodies of these guys, and what's really odd is a lot of guys die in combat, and their eyes don't close. They're still open. And so you're looking at them, and it's really kind of spooky. That's the part of the story that gets really strange, because I don't know if it was the high stress levels of what was going on, the adrenaline, combat, the closeness of death, fear, whatever. But there in the helicopter sitting with me was a presence of all these guys that just died. And I could see their spirits. They were all disorientated, not happy campers at all. They were just, I thought I was cracking up, but I swear that there was ghosts. There was ghosts in my helicopter, and it was something I haven't talked about to this day. Making this video, I've talked about sensing the presence of them, feeling them. I've been afraid to tell people that I actually saw them. People think you're crazy, but I actually saw them. We got to the camp to unload them. We unloaded them, and I felt really bad because we'd risked all of our lives, and the lives of those that were trying to save them. And they just got riddled with bullets, and the fact of trying to get them out of there basically killed them. So we got another call to go back. On the way back, I wondered if I was still going to find the corpsman that was running around when I was leaving the LZ. We got back, we got another load, and we flew all day long, and we were joined by a fellow helicopter from our unit, and so the two of us was in and out of that LZ as much as we could. Took a lot of rounds, a lot of holes in the fuselage, in the tailbone, but it was the blood. At the end of the day, it was the blood that got to me. My hands, the gloves I had, everything was all soaked with blood. My whole entire uniform was soaked with blood. You could actually take it, twist it, and wring blood out. We flew back to the base camp at Fuloy. That's all me and my gunner wanted to do was clean up. But we had to clean the helicopter. We had to work on the helicopter. By the time we got in late that night, there was no more water left to clean the helicopter. And there was no more shower water. It was all gone. And we're just sitting there totally blood soaked. So we cleaned the helicopter out. We got jet fuel, JP4 jet fuel. And we cleaned the inside with jet fuel. And then we decided to take all our clothes off, except for our boots, dog tags. And we poured jet fuel on ourselves. And we washed all of our skin and hands and face and scalp with jet fuel. Very toxic. Could have been very healthy. But we wanted to get the blood off. We didn't want to go back into our hooch and go to bed with blood soaked, dried all over us. So the next day, unfortunately, after having bathed in jet fuel, we were out flying, me and my gunner, and 90-some degrees and hot humidity, and that jet fuel just burned our skin, and we had rashes everywhere conceivable for the next week. But that's a story that stuck with me. I decided to tell this story after some thought, and realizing that I'd be judged by people watching this, thinking I probably cracked up. There's probably some psychiatrists out there who say, "Yeah, sure, you saw dead guys. It was the fear and the adrenaline and all that stuff going on about combat." Well, you can say whatever you want to say, but there was dead guys in my helicopter. There was ghosts, not very happy ghosts, and it haunts me to this day. And it is what it is. So I left Vietnam, and ever since then, I hate dirty hands. I shower and bathe probably more than a regular person should, but I just never felt totally clean again. My story. I was hoping to inspire you, but I don't know if there's anything inspirational about this story. But those veterans out there will understand it. God bless. Hope you did.